Good afternoon. It is December 28th, 2017, and I have the honor and privilege to interview Commissioner William Evans of the Boston Police Department. Thank you, Commissioner, for allowing me to do this. I'm honored to be here to speak to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask you a few questions. You and I just had a few minutes to discuss our passions for leadership. And I was wondering if I were able to get a little bit from you about authentic leadership. And from that viewpoint, can you share a little history in how your job evolved to the top position in the Boston Police Department?
Well, I've been on this job for 37 years, and started out as a cadet, and coming up through the ranks. I was a patrolman, sergeant, lieutenant, captain. Ran the whole uniform branch for 4 years, and now I'm in the commission my 5th year. I've seen all facets of the job, and going up through there, I never really forgot where I came from. I still love being out there, even in my top role, because I think it's important as a leader for those under you to see that you're out on the street with them, that you came up through the ranks and you understand a lot of the challenges they have. And I think that's what an authentic leader is, someone who has done the job at every position and who can relate to the men and women on the street. And I never stopped being a street cop, and and I go 24/7. I start early reading the reports every morning, and I'm out there like I was the other night at 3:30 at a homicide scene. So being an authentic leader is being out with the guys and showing them that you care about how they do their job and care about their well-being.
Thank you. And I got a lot of this from Chief Gross as well. And what he talked about is that it's almost like police department is almost like a brotherhood. It's a community of individuals who really, they feel for each other. They understand each other, and that's how they do their job best. How did you find, and you may have already answered some of this, but I wanted to focus on how you found the leader in you. Like, when did you know you wanted to lead and make a difference?
Well, I think mostly when I became a captain. I was a sergeant on the street, I was a lieutenant, but when I got my first station out in Austin, Brighton, and I was a captain there for 9 years, I knew dealing with the community and listening to their concerns, and out there mostly it was about college behavior, that I enjoyed my role. I loved being out in the community, interacting with people. I really enjoyed that part of my job, and able to bring back to the members of this department. I knew that I had a role as a station commander. Then I went down to the south end, and at that point I was brought up to run the whole department as far as the uniform branch. So in all the roles, but I think the key for me was the captain role, when I knew I had the talent to be in control of that precinct, and I brought it to a higher level and eventually to this level.
It's interesting, Commissioner, because you never really changed. In other words, you got to the captain, the administrative, which could be very heavily administrative, but you made a concerted effort and chose not to do it. You were a change agent for that position. And so, okay, who are your mentors?
Well, I've been very fortunate. My oldest brother, Paul, I was brought up as the youngest of 6 boys, and I lost my parents when I was young, and my brothers brought me up. Yet my oldest brother, Paul, he was on the police department, and he was one of my mentors, and he went on to be the commissioner in Boston for 10 years. And so I always looked up to him. I always relied on him for advice, but I also had 2 other brothers who were chiefs on the fire department. So my brothers were my mentors. We went through a lot growing up, not having parents, but we all stuck together, and we realized how important it is to work hard and how important family is. And so those are the mentors. They taught me a lot growing up, and I forever will be thankful for them.
And that's incredible, because in talking with Chief Gross, he told me a very similar story when he came to Boston. And he told me how important it was to really recognize the community, the people where he lived, as his other parent. And you're talking about your brother. You have a legacy in your family. You have two commissioners.
Right. I think
And,
we're the first
chief. Yeah.
two ever
I
of
mean,
a big city brothers.
it's amazing. I mean, and it's amazing. I can see a passion coming through. So you already told me what you learned from your mentors in leadership. So could you discuss? I know this is kind of a weird question in a way, but good and bad leaders. What
Yeah.
can we learn from bad leaders?
Well, I've seen, when you talk about mentors on the job, I've seen a lot of great leaders who I want to be just like. I can think of people like Ronnie Conway, who was my captain. He knew how to talk to people. He knew how important that community was. I looked at Bob Dunford, who really focused on the crime. And I think you take a lot of good from them, but you also see leaders who, when the challenges come forward, instead of taking them on, they run away from them. And I've seen some leaders like that. I've seen leaders who don't want to make the hard decisions and drop that to other people. Being a leader, you have to deal with the good and the bad, and you just can't run away from the bad. And I've seen that over the course of my career. You got to own up responsibility. And I always say, a good leader never delegates responsibility. Ultimately, it's his choice. And that's why I remember one of the free speech marches. Someone said to me, "What are you doing out there on the street?
Right.
Your position is up in headquarters. You shouldn't be out there." I said, "No, I own it. So I'm going to be there. I'm going to be with my troops. And if the shit hits the fan, I want to be with them." So
That's servant leadership.
yeah, being there. And it's important that they see me out there in good times and in bad times.
That gets respect and loyalty, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I think I think there's been prior commissioners who have led from up here on the fourth floor, but my style is to be out there. I'm out there at 4 o'clock in the morning at shooting scenes and at fire scenes, and if my guys got to be out there and girls, I'm going to be with them.
And and look at you. You're a marathon runner too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times I'm out there at 4 and I'm running at 5:30 in the morning. But again, another example, right? I want my officers to see me out there, exercising, because I want to stress how important that is for the stress of this job. When people say to me all the time, "I don't know how you do this job, what's the secret?" I said, the exercise is key, dealing with the stress. And so not only do I like to set an example on the professional side, but more on my personal side, on how important it is to be both physically and mentally fit.
I love this discussion because the name of this course, Commissioner, is Discovering the Leader in You.
Right.
And leadership has to start from within. And I'm going to just touch on a few things which are dear to all of our hearts in Boston. But how did you fit your role in the Boston Marathon bombing? How did you guys pull it together? How did you get that second terrorist?
Well, again, I look back, and marathoning is near and dear to my heart. I've done 52 marathons, and so I had run that race that day, and I was in the hot tub when the bombs went off. And
Oh my gosh!
when they came in and told me, after doing the marathon, I went home, showered, got my uniform on, and I was back in there. And I didn't go home till 10 p.m. the next night. We were running on adrenaline. And in my position as the superintendent of the uniform branch, we had to put together the whole plan. Canceling officers' days off, securing the whole crime scene. And so for those 4 or 5 days, I was in command mostly of the street, the scene, and chasing down those bad guys. And, Commissioner Davis, he was the commissioner up here, and he was dealing with the media, but myself, Chief Gross, all of us were on the street dealing with the tragedy. And we were in Watertown from 1 o'clock in the morning when I got there until 9 p.m. And when they said that someone was in that boat, we hadn't gone home like everybody else was heading home. So I literally, with 2 of my lieutenants, were the first one on that boat, and I ran that whole final scene in Watertown. I was the incident commander, and I was never so thrilled when we were able to capture that second individual. So from running the race to being actually the guy on the boat to capture that second guy,
That's amazing.
it was an amazing 5 days. It's a tragedy that we lost so many young kids over that.
Yeah.
But for me, as a leader, I think that was always the biggest challenge. You know, after running the marathon, coming right back to work and probably sleeping 10 hours all week, and actually being the guy at the boat to capture that second suspect was, you know, something I'll never forget.
Oh no, and again, a legacy to leave behind. You know, I believe Chief Gross at the time was the night commander,
Right.
and what you guys did collectively, and pulling it all together with such limited information was just amazing. But it's guts,
Yeah.
it's will, and it also shows too about I grew up in East
Right.
Boston. You grew up, but our blood is in Boston.
It was city kids, and when they blew up our marathon, we took it personal.
It was.
And you know, when the shots were getting fired out in Watertown, I'm the guy screaming for everyone to hold their fire, and I got everyone to hold their fire. But you know, they blew up our city. They blew up our marathon. We weren't going to let up until we got those two suspects. And I was never so relieved when we got that fella in the boat.
Yeah, and you know, that's discovering the leader in you, when your guts and your will and everything come together, and you're so focused that nothing else matters except taking care of people,
Right.
that real innocent people.
Yeah.
That certainly has a lot to say about that. So I think that pretty much answers the next question, because I talked about you and Chief Grass and how'd you minimize. You just explained it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have one final question
Yeah.
for you, sir. How will you choose to build your legacy and your present position as Commissioner of BPD, and what do you hope to leave behind?
Well, I hope to leave behind two things, really. A safer city. Obviously, we have less young kids getting shot on our streets, because that's my top priority. That's the thing that keeps me awake at night. But also, stronger relationship with the minority communities. I think that's key. I think that's something I work on through the peace walks, through constantly being out there. You know, I think nobody does community policing better than the Boston PD, and we're continually striving to improve that. And so my legacy to leave behind is basically a strong community relationship where people respect us, they trust us, and also key for me is to leave behind a legacy that people remember me as a kid growing up in the city who deeply cared about the city and put his heart and soul into every day working to make the city a greater place.
And you are doing such a great job at that. I thank you so much for your time. This has been wonderful, and I want to share that legacy with my students. As you probably know, in this class that I'm doing now, there are a lot of police officers in that class, and to hear it from the guy that's in the trenches with them is an honor and a privilege.
No,
Thank you so
thanks.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a wrap.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah, anytime you need